when you don't have enough cellular energy, then every system, including, the central nervous system, the immune system, and the digestive system, all the rest of it, doesn't work as well as it could and should.
Welcome to the Rejuvenate podcast. I'm your host, Chrissy Hawks, and I'm here with my co-host, Elwyn Robinson. Today, we're talking about optimizing hormones and peptides. These are key to looking and feeling younger. So, Elwyn, a lot of people are talking about getting hormonal treatments, but before we discuss that and whether it's a good idea, let's get to the basics. And let's start with, what are hormones?
So, for my simplistic explanation for this podcast, because it does get really complicated, and I made sure I delved in deep with this topic, as I always do, to refresh my understanding. And there's a little bit of not 100% clarity about exactly which things are and aren't classed as hormones, but let's keep it simple. So I would say that hormones are the biological substances which are created by the endocrine glands. I would differentiate them from peptides, neuropeptides, and neurotransmitters, all of which we'll talk about to some degree. Neurotransmitters we'll probably do in a different episode. So I really want to focus more on hormones and the endocrine system. And so why are we focusing on that? Like you said, a lot of people focus on hormones when it comes to looking and feeling younger. And that's one of the main things that we're focused on. But it's also, they're also one of the main things that make us feel. Full stop, right? So understanding hormones help us to understand why we feel what we feel. So that's really, really important. So one of the distinctions between hormones and neurotransmitters, which I think is helpful on a practical functional level, is that hormones are more slow acting, but also longer lasting. Whereas neurotransmitters, the action that they have on you is a shorter duration, and doesn't last as long, whereas hormones, they take longer before you can feel the effects of them quite often, but the duration lasts a lot longer. So in the case of neurotransmitters, like for instance adrenaline, that we're all familiar with, that might impact you, within a second or a split second, and then usually it won't last for more than a few minutes or a few hours, unless, fairly extreme conditions. Whereas with a hormone, if you take in the hormone endogenously, it often takes at least a few hours and, often a few days or weeks before you can really feel it, but then it has a much more long-lasting effect. So that's one of the key distinctions. Now, in terms of the actual more scientific answer, hormones act on the body within the bloodstream, whereas neurotransmitters act on the body within the brain. And then there are some substances that are absolutely both. They act on the brain and the body. They can be found in either, including adrenaline, which we just mentioned.
Wonderful. And with all of this, what are the most important hormones that we may want to optimize?
It's a good question. So I talked about the endocrine system. As soon as I say that, I know a lot of people lose interest if they don't have a scientific bent. So the way that I've actually chosen to remember it is based on the chakra system from the Indian system. Now, you don't have to believe in chakras at all. It's just a mnemonic. Like if you know it, the whole rainbow going up the spine with the red, orange, yellow, green. If you kind of know that at all, and if heart chakra is a thing that you've heard of, even if you don't believe in it or whatever, then it just helps as a little mnemonic to remember the different glands and the different things that they create. So the only one that's kind of out of sequence physiologically is the first chakra, which is the root chakra, which is they call it the survival chakra, and that relates to the adrenal glands. I say it's out of sequence as the adrenal glands are actually a little bit higher, kind of lower back, but midway up your lower back, kind of roughly opposite your navel, something around that kind of area, although they're actually deep inside the body. So the adrenal glands create cortisol, they create DHEA, pregnenolone, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. And with adrenaline and noradrenaline, they're often referred to as epinephrine and norepinephrine, but I'll use the terms adrenaline and noradrenaline as they're more universal, that everyone understands them. So cortisol is your primary stress chemical. We'll talk about that later. DHEA is the building block for many other steroid hormones, as is pregnenolone. I'll explain what steroid hormones mean. I'm sure at some point we'll get to that. I'll just list them first. Remind me if I don't get to it. And then adrenaline and noradrenaline are technically also hormones by this definition that I just gave, but they're usually classed more as neurotransmitters. But they absolutely do go into the bloodstream as well, being created by the adrenal glands. And so technically we can call them hormones too, although they tend to be shorter acting. So the next one up from the root chakra is the second chakra, the sacral chakra, which is related to the sexual glands. So this is the only one that is different for men and women, obviously. For men, it's the testicles. For women, it's the ovaries. But in either case, even though it's fairly different amounts, the key hormones that we're focused on with that would be testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. The sexual glands also create a little bit of the adrenal hormones and stuff like that, but those are like the main ones that we're going to want to focus on. The next one up after that, the third chakra, which relates to digestion and willpower, is the pancreas. So the pancreas is, so you got around the area where at the bottom of the rib cage, you've got the stomach on the left with the spleen there as well. You got the liver and the gallbladder on the right, and then in the middle with the outlet on the right, you got the pancreas. So basically, right in the solar plexus, you have the pancreas. So we talked about the pancreas a little bit in the digestion episode already, and so the hormone that it creates that's super important is insulin, and then also glucagon. And basically, insulin lowers blood sugar, and glucagon raises blood sugar. And so to me, that's why it's related to willpower and energy and stuff like that. Because if you don't have enough sugar, or if you don't have the right amount of sugar in your bloodstream, then you're not going to have energy. The next one up after that, so everyone focuses on the heart chakra, but the heart has this little, so the heart is not a gland, but the heart has this little gland right on top of it, just above it, called the thymus. And the thymus is one of the, it's the primary gland for the immune system, and it's one of the fundamental places for the immune system, along with the spleen and the bone marrow. And so the thymus is really key. And the thymus is really interesting in that it's really big and strong in children and young adults, and then it starts to really atrophy. And then by the time a person gets to around 30 years old, the thymus is largely kind of like shriveled up. There's some controversy about whether that's inevitable or not. Mainstream science would say, yes, it's just what's happened. It's no big deal. The kind of more ancient Eastern perspective, or maybe the more alternative biohacker perspective or whatever might be, actually, that's not great that this crucial part of the immune system shrivels down to way smaller, and that might explain why our immune system doesn't work as well when we get older, why we have all these, we're much more likely at least to get diseases that kill us that are related to the immune system not working properly as we get older. So that's controversial, but not as controversial as it used to be. There are plenty of medical doctors these days prescribing peptides, which help replace the peptides that the thymus is no longer making enough of. So
right.
Becoming a little bit less controversial. The next gland up from that, so we talked about the heart, just above the heart, the thymus. Next gland up from that is the thyroid. And so the thyroid, and the whole chakra system relates to communication and also purification. Their name for it is Vishuddhi or Vishuddha, which means purification. So from a Western scientific perspective, we don't see the thyroid as much as doing either communicating or detoxification. We focus on it really producing thyroxine, which is the key to cellular energy. And it could be said, though, that it is crucial for purification and communication because it's crucial for everything. So including those two things. When you don't have enough cellular energy, then every system, including, the central nervous system, the immune system and the digestive system, all the rest of it, doesn't work as well as it could and should. So, we'll get more into that. I'd like to do individual episodes on all of these things, especially the thyroid.
That would be great. It's well needed.
But for now, we'll go to the next one. So the next one up, now we're getting into the brain. So there's two glands very close to each other that are right near the center of the brain. So the first one is the pineal gland. So the pineal gland creates melatonin. It's not the only place that creates melatonin. Again, like latest cutting edge research actually says that every cell in our body creates melatonin. That melatonin has other extremely important functions, like it may actually be the primary antioxidant in the body, even more important than glutathione, which is well known. But that's cutting edge research. That's not proven. From a more mainstream point of view, what melatonin does, of course, is it helps us sleep and it helps to regulate the sleep-wake cycles. So your body takes tryptophan, which is an amino acid, a part of protein, and through a series of processes, it turns it into serotonin, which I haven't focused on here because it's not produced by any of the endocrine glands, although it is something produced within the digestive tract largely and also within the brain. So that serotonin then, your body turns into melatonin with one methylation process. And then that melatonin has the capacity to be turned into a different form of melatonin and then even DMT. And so this is, again, speculated, but more and more evidence building up that it could be the source of when people have spiritual visions and experiences and all the rest of it naturally through meditation rather than drugs, is because the brain, specifically the pineal gland, is making that flip between melatonin and DMT. As to the utility to that, to the organism, that's something that the scientific community is still trying to struggle with. But one of the things that they've speculated, at least, is that it could help protect us when we're going through extremely traumatic experiences, to have these visions and stuff like that. So that's one idea put forth. Now, DMT, no evidence that it's crucial for anti-aging and feeling young and all the rest of it. But melatonin, very much so. Because when it comes to sleep, we all know these days, actually not that long ago when I was first started teaching, sleep was really underemphasized. But these days, in the last few years, and there's a lot of pioneers who've done some really good work proving this, have shown how crucially important sleep is. And so having that melatonin, serotonin cycle work properly is absolutely a key to keeping us feeling and yes, even looking young. The whole concept of beauty sleep, right? And then lastly, we've got the pituitary gland, which is, as I said, very close to the pineal gland, again, in the center of the brain. And the pituitary is connected to the hypothalamus, another very small part of the brain that's not a gland, but they kind of work as a team. And so the main thing that they do is produce hormones that stimulate other hormones. So for instance, you got luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone, usually called LH or FSH, that tell your ovaries or testes to create more testosterone, estrogen, whatever, right? But there are a few that are specific just to the pituitary, so I would just focus on those. There's oxytocin. Oxytocin is of great interest to me. Again, I'd like to do an episode on it. Not nearly enough research has been done on it, but oxytocin, which is, I would say, the primary hormone which has an opposite antagonistic effect with cortisol, which is our primary stress hormone. So we talked in the last episode about how there's kind of three most of the nervous system, and that one of them is to be relaxed and social. So that corresponds very much with oxytocin from my perspective. Oxytocin most famously released in very large amounts in mothers and newborn babies to help bond them. And so it's kind of known as the love hormone. But it actually has many other uses. Just like we talked about DMT, it's been shown it either gets released during periods of extreme relaxation and happiness, but it also actually can get released during periods of extreme stress. And this, it's speculated, for instance, this is why even though childbirth on any kind of theoretical level should be extremely traumatizing for the mother, it usually is not, something that you have flashbacks about years later, like, oh, the horror, because your body's flooded with oxytocin, which helps to really mitigate that, what could otherwise be perceived traumatically. But I have known mothers who have experienced the process of a child growing inside them and giving birth as horrific and traumatic and view it that way, which obviously was really terrible for them and their children. And I don't know, but maybe there was an issue with them being able to produce enough oxytocin. We certainly know that there are genetic variants, in the genetic insights, we have a report on oxytocin. Some people produce a lot, some people produce not enough. And I said it that way on purpose. I have not seen any evidence yet that there is such a thing as too much oxytocin. I'm sure it will eventually come out that it does exist, but maybe in relation to cortisol, because you do need a certain amount of cortisol. Maybe if someone had a genetic variant that meant they produce loads of oxytocin and a lot less than usual cortisol, that could create problems. But usually an excess of oxytocin isn't the issue. Anyway, other things that are made by the pituitary, growth hormone, right? Another thing that's really focused on by the anti-aging, like feel and look younger community, because growth hormone, now controversially so, some people say doesn't actually help with it so much, like overall to extend lifespan or anything like that, which may be true, but I would say, it could certainly help you to feel younger at least and look younger. And there is definitely the case that growth hormone, like a lot, but not all of the hormones I've talked about, and we'll go through it, goes down substantially with age, right? And so this is the thing where, when it comes to feeling younger, which of course is one of the things that is my primary occupation for myself and to help people with, or to combat premature aging, that the inevitable decline of some hormones and the unfortunate but preventable decline of other hormones is a key aspect to being able to feel younger and feel better. Then there's also vasopressin. So vasopressin is kind of a cousin related to oxytocin. There's some evidence to show that vasopressin is like more important for men. Oxytocin is more important for women. It works differently for the genders to some degree with those two. From a medical point of view, oxytocin is simply the hormone that helps you give birth usually, and vasopressin is simply antidiuretic hormone. So it's basically just the thing that stops you peeing or peeing as much. But as I said, some research shows there's way more to it than that. And then ditto with prolactin. So prolactin is in the same way that cortisol and oxytocin are kind of counterbalance each other. So prolactin does with dopamine, especially. And so it's kind of like the brake. So dopamine gives you this drive and this desire and this charge and all the rest of it, this passion, enthusiasm, motivation. But how do we get you to calm down, right? That's so, I mean, there's a bunch of chemicals that can help you calm down. And, we talked about some this time and last time, like GABA and serotonin and oxytocin. But prolactin is specifically the thing that your body creates to balance out what it perceives, you might not agree, as excessive dopamine. There is also, prolactin also has a role with the sex hormones, and there's some speculation. I've heard Andrew Huberman talk about this. It's more like current research rather than ancient research that has already been, definitely proven that a lot of the things that were blamed on an excess of estrogen, especially in men, were actually caused by an excess of prolactin. So, a tendency to put on weight, for men to have gynecomastia, these kind of things, a lack of sex drive, erectile dysfunction, those kind of issues have been pinned that they may actually be due to an excess of prolactin. I have not seen much research. I've not seen enough research on prolactin. I've not seen enough research on the effects it has on women, other than that it causes secretion of breast milk. Oh yeah, which by the way, mainstream science, that's the only thing prolactin does. In the same way that vasopressin is only antidiuretic, etc. But I haven't seen a huge amount of evidence of how it affects more subtle things, and I would like to. And I haven't seen a huge amount of evidence on the positive roles that prolactin has, and I would like to. I'm sure there is some, but generally, we're looking at reducing prolactin if we're doing anything in most cases, just like generally looking at increasing oxytocin, if anything.
Wonderful, wonderful, Ellen. I mean, that's quite a comprehensive list and a lot more detail to get into at a later point or potentially in another episode, because it's just vast. It really is. But coming back into, what this topic really is about is, essentially, why might somebody want to optimize their hormones? Can you talk to us a little bit more about what optimization is?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's key that we use that word, optimization, rather than fixing, right? So again, as our disclaimer says at the beginning, but it's true, it's not just legal. I'm not a medical doctor, right? So I can't tell you how to fix if you have any medical condition. So this is not about that. This is saying, look, if you have a medical condition, you need to go to a qualified medical practitioner. But often the challenge is that those of us, especially who are getting a bit older, We go to a medical practitioner, we complain, we have this symptom, we have that symptom, and they go, it's normal for your age. Don't worry about it. Right?
Yeah, that's what comes with aging. That's just, getting older. Yeah.
Which is for all kinds of things, right? I mean, low energy, fatigue, gaining weight, but, being in pain all the time, right? If you're in constant pain when you're 20, then they're going to be investigating you. If you're in constant pain when you're 60, they're going to say, well, what do you expect? To some degree. I mean, It depends on a lot of stuff, but that's the general overall kind of experience of most of us as we age. So, as I said, I always recommend that people go to practitioners who can help them. But the kind of practitioner who can help you with this, the kind of medical practitioner who can help you with this, is those who are focusing on optimization and not on fixing. So one of the classic ones that is talked about a lot is testosterone these days, right? That's in like half the country is like very aware of that there's this testosterone crisis, that there's way lower sperm count than there used to be, a lack of manliness, all of that kind of stuff is talked about. But, what's talked about a little bit less is the facts. So the facts are that testosterone has gone down substantially. The average testosterone level, when I say average, I mean median, for you nitpickers out there, the median testosterone level has gone down substantially within the last few decades, like halved. And it's the medical or scientific establishment's response to that, which is so interesting. Do they go, oh my God, there's a crisis, what are we going to do about this? Or do they just change the reference range to make that the new normal? And so the unfortunate thing is that they chose the latter. They're like, oh, well now, the average is this thing that's way lower than it used to be. Well, great. So that's the new average. No big deal, right? And so this is often the case, often the problem, those of us interested in optimization would say with the not whole medical profession, but the standard mainstream general one, is that they're only interested in fixing things when they're already extremely bad, right? So but as I said, there are plenty of great doctors out there, especially in the US, where you're based largely at the moment, Chrissy, that really do care about optimization, not just like fixing things once they go really badly. And so that's really what we want to look at. So testosterone I gave you is one example. So that's an example where something's going on that means that it's way lower than it used to be on average for men as they age. However, another aspect is just that a lot of hormones just get lower as we age, and there's nothing we can do about it. So even though testosterone is now lower for a 40-year-old man than it used to be 40 years ago, it always was lower for a 40-year-old man than a 20-year-old. And it was always lower for 60 than a 40-year-old, like on average, again, median. And so the question is, do we accept that? In the case of testosterone, some men say maybe, right? Because although there are benefits to testosterone, there are also some drawbacks. Not so much medically, but anymore, that's been largely disproven. Although there are a few things like high testosterone, if your body turns it to DHT, which it probably will, does lead to male pattern baldness, right? That's just inevitable as far as we know. So the only thing you can do about it is to block the testosterone with DHT blockers. That's usually what's done. There are other things as well. Enlarged prostate, which I'd like to do in a future episode soon because that's such an important thing. That's another thing. So there are a few medical issues that can come with excess testosterone. So other things that decline. So sex hormones in women, definitely. And more dramatically and more importantly, like the decline in women in hormones and how it makes them feel is significantly more impactful. The only reason I focus on testosterone is because it's kind of gone down in the last few decades. But for women, they've always been suffering with this, of having their hormones go way down. As they go, what's from being fertile to what's called the menopause, and then not being able to reproduce anymore, which doesn't really happen to men. That change and the horrible, for many women, like feelings that they experience along with that are because they don't have the hormones anymore that make them feel good. So then the question is, do we want to accept that that's just life, and that by the time you're 60 and you're a woman, you've got to get used to this new normal? Or do you actually optimize those hormones in some way, right? So that's another reason. And then other examples that we talked about growth hormone, right? So that's your ability to recover from exercise, from exertion, also from anything, from an injury, from a cut, from a burn, so that ability to recuperate and build new cells. We talked about the thymus peptides. So, and again, this is more new. All the hormone stuff I've been talking about has been, around for decades, but peptides are a lot newer. But do we want to give the body the hormones that it needs? Melatonin, this has been available as a supplement for decades. There's kind of a debate about that, like once you get older. It's interesting that there's one hormone that no one argues with supplementing with if the person's gland doesn't make enough, and that's insulin, right? Well, I say no one argues with. There are some in the very, very natural only health field who will try and get you onto a rigorous diet, claiming that will help your pancreas create its own insulin. Again, I've heard of cases where that actually works, right? But anyway, in general, the vast majority of us, including myself, if my pancreas suddenly stopped being able to produce insulin, I would take insulin, right? That's a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Now, the reason for that, and the reason why that's fully mainstream medicine, is because without insulin, you'll die, right? So you need it. But in the case of whether it's supplementing with testosterone or progesterone or thymolin or growth hormone or DHEA or anything like that, all these things that do take a dive beyond a certain point, there's a question of, okay, you won't die without it, but you might feel like you want to die without it. And so do we care about that, right? Do we say, you know what, it's just aging, get over it, get used to it? Or do we say, you know what, no, I actually want it to be as good as it possibly can be given the resources that are available to me?
Absolutely. It's about quality of life. It's about enjoying it, being able to, feel good, because otherwise then it's pretty miserable existence.
Yeah, and actually functionality as well. I mean, I don't want to make out it's only about how you feel inside. It's it's productivity, right? A man who's got higher testosterone is going to be way more productive. And you could even make a case of burden in the medical system. You could make a case, although this is not proven, right, for anyone, that if you focus on optimization, then you're less likely to need emergency interventions later on. Not guaranteed that you won't, but yeah, and I'd love to see the evidence on that being collated. I would say it just makes sense. Of course, there are exceptions. Sometimes you do everything and there's still a problem. There's genetic reasons for that, right? We talk about genetic insights. You're not born a blank slate, right? Everyone has different challenges and benefits, positives and negatives and all the rest of it.
No, that's absolutely true. It's, looking at it, it's like you've got twins or you've got siblings and, one's one way. And I know I have the different genetics, but it's those factors, those lifestyles, everything else that comes into it with it. And, just understanding and knowing that there actually is something that we can do about it. We don't just have to say, hey, oh, that's it. It's just my lot. I'm getting older and yeah, that's that. Now, I love that, there's so much information out there. It keeps coming. We're here putting this out to say, hey, if you don't like what's happening, there's options here, really options. So with,
yes,
then Elwin, how can we optimize all these hormones?
Yeah, it's a good question. And of course, I've kind of jumped ahead because I know that's what many people searching this video will, be checking and trying to find out and informing themselves about. But of course, directly supplementing in some way the hormone that you're low on is not the only option, and it may well not be the first option that you go for. So all the stuff that I generally teach, that we'll continue to teach, throughout this series of podcasts. So to list a few of them, building blocks. So building blocks are like the nutrients that your body is built out of, and it is very, very possible, especially with some of the hormones, that the reason why you may not have enough is because you don't have enough of the raw materials to produce them. You can look at it as simply as that. So I already gave melatonin and serotonin as one example. If you don't have enough of the amino acid tryptophan, or you don't have enough of some of the cofactors, the vitamins and minerals that turn that amino acid into serotonin and melatonin, then, does it make sense to immediately supplement the thing that you don't have enough of, when in fact you could support your body to make more of its own? Not necessarily. So building blocks can be in the form of food, like famously, for instance, chicken and turkey are high in tryptophan. And so there's that idea that, they can raise serotonin and help you feel sleepy. Although in practice, a lot of the time, actually a high carbohydrate diet raises serotonin more through a different mechanism, not for it being a building block. But, in the case of thyroxine, thyroxine is basically made out of tyrosine, which is another amino acid, and iodine, which is a mineral. Now, a tyrosine deficiency is fairly rare or even suboptimal amounts, although it definitely happens because tyrosine is a building block not just for thyroxine, but also for adrenaline, noradrenaline, and dopamine. And so, again, this is my speculation, but I'm not the only one making it. I see many other nutritionists that when a person is constantly excessively producing high amounts of stress chemicals, it kind of robs the available tyrosine. And then I speculate that it means that there's less available then potentially to make thyroxine because your body always prioritizes emergencies first, just like the mainstream medical establishment. So if it thinks there's an emergency, it's going to create stress chemicals as a priority. Of course, it still creates some thyroxine. It's not, in the vast majority of cases, it's not like insulin where it produces so little that you'll die, like in the case of when the body doesn't produce insulin, but it produces a low enough level to give you all kinds of issues, which maybe we'll talk about this time or when we focus on the thyroid. So building blocks, those are two examples. And every single thing that I said, there are building blocks that will either support the direct production of the hormone or neuropeptide or a peptide, or there are hormones that will support at least the gland, so supporting it indirectly. Detoxification. So a lot of the time, it's toxicity of various different kinds that actually stops the optimal production of hormones. And this is kind of well known. So xenoestrogens, for instance. I didn't write notes of these, but off the top of my head.
I was going to say, can you give us a little bit of background on that?
Yeah. So these are man-made estrogens. Which are, that's what xeno means, man-made estrogens, which are found in plastics specifically, but just in drinking water as well. And so often we have an overload of one hormone in a kind of fake, not really usable by the body form, which then impacts the ability to for the body to have enough of the other hormones. And a lot of the time with hormones, what you're looking for is not like a certain level within a test necessarily. Sometimes it is, but a lot of the time it's more the ratio between hormones. And that's definitely true with the sex hormones. So by massively increasing estrogen through, xenoestrogens, also plant estrogens, it's high in soy and various other foods that we consume much more of these days than we used to. And then even, there's an argument to be made, like some people are on extremely, like maybe vegans, for instance, are on like a no cholesterol diet, like no cholesterol coming from diet. The body can make its own cholesterol, but there's still perhaps an argument to be made that through that lack of cholesterol, your body then can't turn enough of it into pregnenolone and then DHEA and then all the different stress hormones like cortisol and the sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen. So, so another more obvious example of toxicity would be the halogens. What's that? There's like a class of elements in the periodic table next to iodine. So there's fluoride, chlorine, and bromine. Most people heard of fluoride. Most people heard of chlorine, but bromine is something they often put in bread and various foods, as well as often it's used these days like to keep pools clean instead of chlorine. And so all of these are toxins that are attracted to the thyroid gland. And so it's speculated without too much controversy, I believe, in this day and age, that when there's an excessive amount of these things, I think the only thing that's controversial is probably the definition of excessive, but when there is an excess, an admitted excess of these substances, then they go into the thyroid gland and they displace the iodine and then stop the thyroid being able to create an optimal amount of iodine. And so this is one of many, many, many reasons that we want to reduce the level of chlorine, bromine, and in fact, fluoride that we're taking in. There's two examples of detoxification. Lifestyle is obviously big, right? So, does it make sense to take melatonin when you could just like go to sleep earlier, make sure you don't have any blue light for the last couple of hours of sleep, all the sleep in a cooler room, all the usual sleep hygiene techniques that we can maybe talk about if we do an episode about sleep. But, so does it make sense to just take the thing straight away when there's all kinds of lifestyle changes that we can be making? With the immune system, we'll definitely do an episode of the immune system because it's so important. There's all kinds of ways you can support your immune system with lifestyle, right? Before you necessarily start using exogenous peptides. So lifestyle's obvious. And then addressing emotional issues, I would say, is another big one on the list. So, we talked about that a lot with stress last time, so I won't go into it hugely, but we talked about how, being in the sympathetic or the dorsal vagal state, being either anxious and stressed or maybe shut down and depressed, absolutely has an impact on the whole body, and it definitely has an impact on the hormones and the chemistry of the body. And then, it's also important to be aware of hormonal factors. Now, I would never take something exogenous. Exogenous means from outside you, endogenous means created within you. So I would never take something exogenous purely based on a genetic result. But because the genetic results are often a lot cheaper than actual blood tests and a lot more, less subject to the vagaries of everyday fluctuations, they're a good starting place, So if you know that your cortisol has a tendency to be high genetically, or if you know that you have a tendency to low thyroxine genetically, or whatever it might be, that's a good starting place. And then you can do testing with a qualified professional. So that can be really helpful as well. But yeah, I would recommend being on top of all that stuff first. Now, some people say, I don't have time, I don't have inclination, I just want to, then that's a choice, right? Direct substitution of everything I mentioned, looking at my list, is there anything that I mentioned that you can't just get? I don't think so. Well, DMT is the only one you can't get legally. But with everything else, it is possible. You can get it. Now, many of them require a doctor prescription. Which ones do and don't is pretty arbitrary, I would say. You can get cortisol if it's in a drug form, like hydrocortisone, it's often called. But you can get adrenal cortex, which is like a glandular form that has a certain amount of cortisol. That's completely legal, and you can just buy that as a supplement. And in some cases, that's necessary. You can have too little cortisol just as you can have too much. But with thyroxine, you can't get that legally, even if it's in the form of a glandular in most countries. In that case, you need a doctor's prescription for it. Testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, those are usually controlled. Thymosin and thymolin are usually controlled, but usually you can buy them for quote unquote research purposes. So that's a way that people go, especially if you live in a country like myself, where there are no doctors who'll prescribe them for you, as far as I'm aware. So that's your only way of doing it if you wanted to try something like that. And then, melatonin, you can just get off the shelf. That's in some countries, but not all. In some countries, it's a prescription drug that a doctor needs to prescribe for you. So even that varies. And then with growth hormone, from the research I've done, I would never recommend to take growth hormone directly. I would recommend, if you're interested in increasing growth hormone, that you use growth hormone releasing peptides and growth hormone releasing hormones, like, for instance, ipamorelin, which they stimulate your body to make its own. It's been shown that is a lot safer. With all this stuff, it comes with potential dangers, right? And so it is always better to do it with a practitioner who is focused on optimization, who is competent, who is qualified, who has a good track record, who ideally you can look them up, you can see good reviews, you can talk to previous patients, clients, whatever they call it. Like, it's always better to get that support, of course.
Absolutely. And I'll come back to being able to find a good one, but I just want to track back in a minute. I mean, because obviously the best case scenario would be that our bodies were making these optimal amounts and all of that. If we do start to, do direct substitution, is there a case where then I guess you would just test to figure out whether you continue using it or whether you stop using it? I mean, what would somebody do like in that instance?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that reminds me, like, one of the biggest objections to direct substitution, which is entirely valid, which is if I start taking it from an external source, not made in my own body, is my own body going to make less?
Yes.
And then is my own body going to be capable of making less so that I am going to become dependent on that thing? So this is a really good question. And the answers are not easy. I would say, actually, it's important to take it on a case-by-case basis. So first part of it, will my body make less of it if I'm also taking it in myself? The answer to that is almost always yes. The only exception I know to that, and again, I may be wrong about this, I'm open to it, but from the research I've done, is oxytocin. Oxytocin seems to be one of the only things, again, from the research I've done, please correct me in the comments below if you have found research that indicates something otherwise, but it's one of the only things that your body doesn't down-regulate. Like we mentioned with dopamine straight away, your body really doesn't like you having above a certain amount of dopamine. It's constantly trying to lower it. And which is why, like, when we chase success and achievements and highs, they're always short-lived, right? Because your body's constantly regulating that dopamine back down again. But with oxytocin, it's interesting. Like, the Buddhists say that desire is the root cause of all suffering, and dopamine is the cause of desire. So it's almost like your body thinks that dopamine is not a great thing and keeps trying to lower it. But most of the spiritual system also say that love is infinite, love is eternal. There's no such thing as too much love. And sure enough, in the body, when there's abundance of oxytocin, the body just goes great. It doesn't necessarily down-regulate it. Again, from what I've seen so far. So, but yeah, with everything else, I think, yeah, without exception on that list, you start taking a lot of it externally, your body's going to make less. Now, the key phrase there is a lot of it, right? So, for instance, in the case of melatonin, there's conflicting research about this, but I've seen studies that say even when having very large amounts of melatonin, like way more than you'd actually take daily for months, that your body's own production barely changes, right? So there's some studies saying that. The studies that say that melatonin supplementation is a bad idea are less talking about your body's own down-regulation, and they're more focused on like the effects it has on other hormones if you have large amounts of melatonin exogenously. So yeah, in terms of, okay, so it reduces it, will it perhaps not be able to make it as well when you stop? The answer is that varies widely. With some of them, the general, and again, all of this stuff is not settled science as far as I've seen, right? Some practitioners and experts act like it's settled science, but then suddenly they discover something else and all the settled science goes out the window. So this is not settled as far as I'm concerned, but the general consensus with some things is after a period of time, few weeks, few months, your body can go right back to making as much as it did before with some things. With other things, it's extremely difficult, stroke impossible. So yes, it does matter. So, and I can, go through which is which if you like, but before I do that, I'll just address what I would say is the natural next question, which is if it's dangerous in the sense that it can cause your body to stop being able to make its own permanently, why would you ever bother? And so, well, just preview, one of the ones that it does that to potentially is testosterone, right? Now, even that, again, not settled science. Some people who offer testosterone replacement say that after a long period you can wean off it slowly and eventually kick in your own production again. But it's certainly true that when you take exogenous testosterone, even at a physiological level, so meaning an amount that your testicles could make themselves, because a lot of people take a super physiological level, it's like way more than their testicles can take themselves. But even those who just take a high end of the scale, what your testicles can make yourself, your testicles shrivel up. Like they get way smaller, just like we talked about with the thymus, because that's like their primary job. So they're just not as necessary. And then sperm production goes down unless you take another thing like HCG. So that can be an issue. And that's often where men don't want to take testosterone is if they still want to conceive at some point. But then, as I say, these days there's like a way to still be able to conceive. There's like another thing that you have to take. But why would you do it? The answer is this: it's all to do with the quality of life. So I think sometimes it's very easy, and I've seen this so much in the alternative, natural health world, whatever you want to call it, that people get so stuck in like rigid principles, right? And the extreme examples would be like schools of thought that are like nothing unnatural is allowed, right? No drugs, no supplements, no procedures, and then certainly no hormone substitution, none of that, right? And I understand it's coming from a very idealistic place. And sometimes it works for those people. And those are the ones who tend to shout it from the rooftops. Hey, just fast, for a month and everything sorts itself out. Occasionally true, sometimes true. Or just eat this diet, or just do this intensive exercise program, just do this intensive, yoga program. All your glands will regenerate themselves and everything will be well. And of course, if that works for you, then that's wonderful, right? We're not knocking anyone who, in fact, I'm very envious of and respectful of and admiring of anyone whom that's worked for. But what I also tend to find is a lot of people who are followers of those people who are like, oh, it hasn't worked for me, but it's because I'm not doing it enough, right? I'm like 99% vegan, but I'm not 100% vegan. That's the problem. Or, I've been doing the yoga almost every day, but I missed a day. That's why it still hasn't worked yet. Rather than questioning, maybe this particular...
Maybe there's more to
natural, yeah. Maybe this particular natural, let's do it all in a totally natural way regime doesn't work for everyone for a variety of reasons, right? Maybe genetic factors being important as well. I remember a health expert guru, whatever you want to call it. I had a consultation with a few years ago, and they gave advice that was so not understanding the issue and so general that I questioned it. And they said, I've never been ill a day in my life. I know what I'm talking about. And I was like, oh, you've never been ill a day in your life. You've got great genes and probably great upbringing, right? At least in terms of health, right? Your parents raised you well and they got you doing healthy stuff early and you went along with it, and good for you, right? But that's not the position I'm in right now. The position I'm in is all of that stuff is not true, that I just said, for me. And I got a mess I got to try and resolve, So again, there's this idea that you should always listen to and follow the advice of people who look great health, great energy, great body, and all the rest of it. This makes sense because, why would you want to take weight loss advice from someone who's morbidly obese? That makes sense. But on the other hand, why would you want to take weight loss advice from someone who's never been anything other than underweight, right? Because they also don't know what it's like. Now, in each case, you might want to, right? You might want to take advice from someone who's never been through what you've been through. It all depends, but I'm just saying, ask these questions. I often feel like people are a little bit too simplistic about it all.
We're going to take a quick break to share with you one of our amazing sponsors, Genetic Insights. What makes Genetic Insights uniquely valuable is that they test over 83 million different variants, which guarantees a 99.7% accuracy on all of their DNA reports. With over 100 reports available, you get comprehensive insights into what your DNA is telling you about how to optimize your health today and in the future. I found reviewing my results to be incredibly accurate and applying some of the recommendations, which are personalized to your individual DNA, to be extremely helpful for me and my family. I also loved how easy it was to upload my raw DNA data that I already had from previously using Ancestry.com, because Genetic Insights supports uploading raw data from all major platforms. To get your health reports, go to geneticinsights.co and get 20% off today by using coupon code Rejuvenate. Remember that supporting our sponsors supports our podcast, which allows us to keep sharing this important information with you free of cost. So, go get your Genetic Insights health reports by going to geneticinsights.co and use coupon code Rejuvenate for 20% off today. And I think that goes back to when you were talking about finding the good practitioner and finding somebody that you relate with. It's more about engaging with them, making sure that you're both on the same page. You both have the understanding of what you're wanting, what you're gaining. And there's that communication that goes both ways with that. And as well, just like as you described, you need support along this way, because there are these avenues, where you want to find somebody that has a deeper knowledge and at the same time that is going to help guide you to the goal that you want and understands where you're coming from and where you want to go. So which then takes me back into, let's say,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Where you found, maybe you need help finding their practitioner. You said you search them up, but once you're there with that practitioner, then what happens next? Is it they start testing? How often do they test? I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, so let me answer that. Let me go back slightly just for, how to find a good one.
Yeah.
So obviously everyone thinks of referral, and referral's great, but I've actually known numerous cases where someone has seen a practitioner due to referral and then goes, oh yeah, it was a bad experience. And then when I actually check with the person, they're like, oh yeah, it ended up being a bad experience for me too. So make sure that this referral, that it's not like, well, not that it's not, but question it if the person, how long the person has been with that person. Ask them the kind of questions that I would encourage you to ask yourself about the person. So are they focused on optimization rather than just fixing severe issues? That would be one of the things we talked about. Their reputation, their online reputation, are they actually qualified? How many years they've been working? All that kind of stuff. But I think another, I would hope all that goes without saying, which is why I'm skimming over it. Another huge thing which you reminded me of there that I just wanted to get out there is partly related to your question, so I'll get to that, like how they treat you. But another one is like, what if things go wrong, if things don't work, is their attitude that it's your fault or that it's their fault? You could say, don't think of it in terms of fault, but the crucial thing that I've seen with practitioners or experts, gurus, whatever, who are dogmatic and who are not primarily focused on helping the person, is that when you go to them and go, I did exactly what you said and it didn't work. Like, how do they respond to that? Now, I can tell you in my years of doing it, most of what I've learned, a lot of people consider me to be, widely knowledgeable, let's just say, is through those interactions, through people coming to me and said, I tried everything and it didn't work. And rather than going, you must be doing it wrong, I go, that's interesting. I wonder why not, right? and that question has led me to discovering so much more. But and I think this is partly because I'm not an expert and I'm not a specialist in any one thing. And what I find is, not always, but often specialists, and pretty much every qualified person there's a few who are eclectic, who are qualified in many fields, and that's wonderful if you can find them. But the specialist often is like, this is the way, right? This is this idea that when all you got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. It's that famous idea, surgeons just want to cut you open, and other doctors just want to give you drugs, but nutritionists just want to change your diet and your supplement regime and whatever, right? It's like acupuncturists just want to stick needles in you and offer you herbs. It's like everyone has their thing, and so it's like, if their thing doesn't work, how do they respond? So that's an ideal practitioner who, if it doesn't work. Now, I've also known plenty who just go, like, they don't claim to have all the answers. And that's better, obviously, than blaming you. But it's still not an optimal practitioner to me. An optimal one is who then goes, let me look into it. Look, I've taken you under my care. You paid me this much money. You spent this much time on me. You've invested this much hope in me. Let me work it out, what it is that can help you. Now, some practitioners may reply and say, oh, you don't understand. We don't have time for that. Okay, fair enough. But that would be the optimal, I would say. So yeah, back to the question, what would happen? So, and this is a really important question, because again, I've had to guide people through this the last few years, is obviously they should be, when it comes to hormones, it's testing. So often they require at least one test, but sometimes they even require several tests, like through a period of time, to make sure that this is not a temporary thing, right? Before they will give you any, exogenous hormones or indeed peptides. Although peptides are usually not a thing that can be tested. So yeah, we're really talking more about hormones. And then they'll recommend something. They'll recommend a series of things. They'll come up with an action plan. And everyone does that, right? The distinctiveness about what I'd say would really distinguish a good practitioner is do they follow up with you? How often do they follow up with you? Now, again, if they're following up more frequently and advising you do more testing, yes, that is more expensive. But many practitioners I've seen are expensive don't do that. And then many others I've seen, maybe they're not expensive and maybe that's why they don't do it, but they should at least offer you the option, right? So, if you're on testosterone replacement, for instance, then, which I'm not, by the way, that would be the last thing I need. Mine's actually over the scale. I have different hormonal issues. But those who are on that, for instance, I know people who are, sometimes they just test. Well, they have to test a few things with testosterone. They have to test testosterone, they test PSA to make sure it's not enlarging your prostate and your red blood cells and all kinds of stuff. But often they don't do like a full spectrum of all the hormones, like your estrogen, your pregnenolone, your prolactin, and all the rest of it. And you actually should know all of them and be testing all of those things regularly. So really, the more they test, the better. And then ideally, they're not sticking to just the sex hormones. Even if you've gone to them with an issue of sex hormones, they're also checking the other stuff that's at least easy to check. So they should be checking whether your blood sugar is okay with like a A1C, which helps, identify the insulin. They should be checking your thyroid. They should be checking your adrenal hormones. Some of the pituitary ones, they usually will check, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. But, just as many different things as possible is always a good sign. And as regular as possible is always a good sign. And changing what they give you based on that is also a good sign. Another thing I would say that this is fine tuning, but are they more focused on convenience or optimization? So in the case of testosterone replacement, for instance, they can give you like a dose that lasts 1 or 2 weeks, or they could give you like every day. And so often they'll give it to you like a week's dose, just because then it's less hassle. You only have to, usually inject yourself with it once a week. But like you're then giving yourself an amount that your testicles will normally take 7 days to create all in one go. Which means the first day you got way too much in your bloodstream, and by day 6.5, right, just before you have your next dose, it's like it could have really cratered again. It's like too low. So you're on this massive roller coaster, This is more an issue of testosterone, usually of progesterone and estrogen for women, or when women, they give them testosterone, it's usually just a much smaller amount in cream form. Usually they do dose it properly. They'll tell you, to have it certain days of the month and all the rest of it. But yeah, that can be an issue as well. And then there's also how informed are they? So in the area of thyroid, without getting into that massively, the normal amount is not necessarily the optimal amount. In fact, it's not. And again, with thyroid, are they only testing TSH? Which many who are experts in the field say that is nothing. It's not quite nothing, because if your TSH is substantially elevated or lowered, it will tell you something. But your TSH can be perfect and you can have a severe thyroid issue. That is my alternative understanding from having read many, many books by all medical doctors, but doctors who focus on optimization rather than just, fixing you once you're really bad. And so making sure that they're testing free T3, free T4, both different types of thyroid antibodies, and then ferritin, which is your level of iron, and then cortisol, which is the least common thing that they test, but is also crucial, because if you have a way too high or way too low level of cortisol, which is more common than the mainstream thinks, then that stops your thyroid hormone being able to get into your cells, meaning you might be taking something like in a capsule form, whatever, and then your body can't get it where it needs to go. And that would explain why some people on thyroid meds don't feel any better. So I guess those are two examples. The bottom line of it is make sure to educate yourself. I just said I don't need testosterone optimization. I'll acknowledge I do need thyroid optimization. Turned out my TSH was sky high, which was the obvious warning sign of it. But sky high enough that in the US I would have been offered thyroxine, but in the UK, because there's so many people with thyroid problems, they just increased the reference range. so by the
Easy
UK, yeah. So based on the UK criteria, I don't. So great. Except for, again, to a doctor who focuses on optimization rather than just fixing it once it's so bad it's outside the reference range. And so, yeah, I've had those same concerns when you support your body. And I tried to support my body initially with everything I said: building blocks, detoxification, healthy lifestyle, emotional issues, meditation practices, breathing practices, all of that stuff, because often it's an excess of stress chemicals, like being in sympathetic state for a long time, that will throw off the thyroid. That's usually the first thing. But sometimes, and I tried different peptides that help your body to stimulate your own production, all the rest of it, but nothing worked probably because I've had the problem so long. It's also in my genes, so I suspect I've had it for decades because I feel better now than I have ever. And so, sometimes that's the situation, right? And so was it a concern that I might be dependent on it for life? Yes. But faced with the alternative of how you feel when you don't have enough cellular energy because you don't have enough thyroxine, it's a constant struggle. If you don't have enough cellular energy, it's a constant struggle. And when you don't have enough cellular energy, the only alternative to have enough energy to function, should you not give up on life, which some people do, is stress hormones, stress chemicals, adrenaline, noradrenaline, dopamine, cortisol. So then you get addicted to stress. You're a stress junkie. But are you a stress junkie? What started first, being a stress junkie or having depleted thyroid? It could actually be either. I'll never know because I didn't do the test back then. You can end up with depleted thyroid because you're a stress junkie, but you can also end up a stress junkie because you got depleted thyroid, So all of this is important to understand. All of it's important to find out.
No, that's really good. And I think you kind of went over it just slightly, but maybe you can go into more detail. If you can't, let's say finances are really, really tough and things like that, could you do it yourself? Are there things that you can do on your own? But I think, you touched on it, educate yourself. There are tests out there, right, that you can find and have somebody help you with?
All of it can be done yourself. I would not recommend it unless you literally live in a country where you can't get it. But you can educate yourself. I've been to practitioners wherever possible, but I will say sometimes, it doesn't feel necessary. But the benefit of it is that you just have that safety net, right? If you possibly can. So in terms of money, most of these hormone optimization things, again, of course, it totally depends on your country and even your region and all the rest of it. But, in the US, UK, you're talking about $100, $300 a month, something like that. Now, that is a lot of money, of course, to some people. But, based on the median wage, right, it's 5% of income, maybe less, something like that. If it's what you need, it's I would say it's the best money you spent, because a lot of us spend so much money. I know a lot of us are just struggling to get by, and we're spending a lot of money on necessities. But in my experience, we're also spending a lot of money on stuff to help us feel better, right? Alcohol, cannabis, other prescription drugs, activities, watching movies, coffee, all of this stuff to help us feel better and get through the day, right? So what I'd suggest is take the get through the day with substances budget and put it into this, because it's a much more healthy, helpful, and actually it's better. You're way better off getting your hormones in a more optimal place than you are taking uppers in the morning to get you going, taking downers at night so you can calm down and get to sleep and all the rest of it. It's a way better. And again, I know some of you are struggling to get by and you don't do any of that. I respect that, I understand that. But I know a lot of people who are struggling to get by who still, pay for all this other mood altering substances. And I would just say, this is the real stuff. This is way, way better.
With all of that, then which hormones would you consider then in that supplementation area, or looking deeper at that?
So if I get someone who, starting from scratch, just wants to optimize, limited budget, I would say, first of all, I would test myself some of the basics, because now, of course, you need to know how to interpret the results, but if you don't feel confident you can interpret the results once you get them, you can always just take those results then and take them to a practitioner. Whereas if you test yourself, like, practitioners are often actually quite a lot more expensive than testing yourself with a few things, which is what I'm about to list. So if they are genuinely optimal, then you don't need to, afford to pay for a practitioner. And often, a bunch of stuff will be optimal and just one thing will be off. And then you can afford to put the money into finding the practitioner who specializes in that. Because unfortunately, this is better in America, but I've seen in at least a lot of places, it's very siloed. I mean, this is typical for the medical community, right? You have specialists in this, specialists in that, and you have a GP, a general practitioner. I don't know what you call that in the US, but even with them, they often refer you as soon as it gets complicated with any particular issue to someone who's only a specialist in one thing. So I would recommend everyone, it's worth testing sex hormones beyond the age of 30. It's worth testing sex hormones even younger than 30 if you have the symptoms of having low stuff. So I guess even before you're doing any testing, look at the symptoms. Don't be a hypochondriac. Don't go, oh my God, I must have that. Because with many symptoms like low energy and stress and all the rest, there's many, 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 many potential causes. But, if you match a lot of the criteria, then test. So I test all the sex hormones, specifically at least testosterone, estrogen in both sexes, progesterone as well for women. That would be a minimum, absolute minimum. Usually with those tests, they'll do the other ones like luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating and stuff. So I'd put that in as well. I would do prolactin, especially if you're a man, because as I said, a lot of those deficiency of testosterone symptoms may actually be an excess of prolactin. So that's something to look at. In terms of blood tests, I would also do free T3 and T4, we talked about earlier. So that's thyroid. Again, that's cheap usually. When I say cheap, I mean tens of dollars, like I don't know exactly, but $40, $50, $60, something like that. You can get a test like that can change your life if you have an issue with it. And then TSH as well. I don't think you ever see free T3 and T4 without TSH. I didn't write it down, but yeah, that would be part of it. A TSH, by the way, just to explain, thyroid stimulating hormone. Remember I said earlier that the pituitary, it largely creates hormones that stimulate other hormones. So that's one example. TSH is mainly the pituitary. And then A1C. That's the, in England, we call that HbA1c. But this is the measurement that tells you how high your blood sugar has been the last few months, which it tells you if your blood sugar has been overly high for the last few months, that means that your body may not be producing enough insulin anymore, or maybe you're insulin resistant. It helps you to investigate the insulin thing. So that's a minimum. And all of that, again, it depends on where you are, but in the UK, you can get a test for all of that for like $100, something like that. So a one-off test. So that, to me, that's way more worth it than, and I say this as a seller of supplements, in many cases, that's way more worth it than buying a few supplements, because then you actually know what's going on.
Absolutely. And, if you look at it, how much money is in the cupboard in all those supplements? And do you still have bottles that are expired or anything like that? So there's a lot with looking at things so that you can it can help pinpoint you and help put you in the right direction. Earlier, you mentioned peptides as well. So talk to us a little bit more about those peptides. Which ones would you consider?
Yeah, so peptides are really at the cutting edge of like the, how would you say, optimization world, biohacker world, it's called sometimes, right? Like people who want to be as youthful and healthy and all the rest for as long as possible. But they're really, really interesting. So there are a few. Now, for those of you who know about peptides, that's the reason you're watching this. I'm not going to mention things like BP 157, TB 500, because like they're not really related to the glands as much. TB 500 is actually, but and I won't talk about like some of the other peptides like Ozempic and all the rest of it. All of them can be good. We might do a peptide episode, but I'll focus on the glandular ones. So growth hormone peptides, I would definitely consider. Growth hormone releasing peptide and growth hormone releasing hormone. They're often taken together because they have a synergistic effect. They're way more powerful together than separately. What's good about them? What I like about them, first of all, they are great value for money. Meaning at the dosage that some of the peptides are really expensive. There's some peptides where like it's $50 or $100 per dose. Some of them even way higher than that. Growth hormone peptides, you can get like several months supply for $100. So as peptides go, extremely good value for money. So growth hormone is especially good for those who want to gain muscle, although not a lot. It's not going to make a big difference, not compared to taking large doses of testosterone, but it'll make it a little bit different. It's very good for people who want to who do a lot of exercise and want to recover more quickly. And it's very good for people who want to lose kind of body fat, without losing what tends to happen with growth hormone, if you boost it a little bit, is that you lose a little bit of fat weight and you gain a little bit of muscle and bone density. So overall, you don't lose weight, but you look much better. You look, more trim.
Great. So, and I want to just quickly check, because a lot of women, especially if you start to get over 40 or the things start to happen, body starts to change, things just kind of start not looking how you want them to, or things just, change. Mm-hmm. How would you be able to, and maybe this is time for another topic where we could take it someplace else, but figuring out, okay, is it better that I take, let's say, the growth hormone peptides, or is it another hormone that I'm potentially missing of what's happening here with my body in this way, where I'm potentially just putting on weight and it's very difficult to lose it? What would you do?
It's a good question. I'll answer it in a nutshell. We should definitely do an episode on it. First of all, the primary is the hormones. So one of the things that makes it impossible to lose weight is when your sex hormones are off. Another thing that makes it impossible to lose weight is when you don't have enough thyroid hormone. From my perspective, those are by far the two most common causes. If you have an insulin problem, that can also be an issue, because then a lot of overeating is emotional, but a lot of it is also biological, which the blood sugar is fluctuating too much. And then when the blood sugar is low, we eat, we overeat. Cortisol can be another one. If cortisol is too low, especially, that can lead to weight gain. So I would look at the hormones first. If you've already looked at the hormones, then I would get into the peptides. That's the order I'd do it. Now, the other peptide for weight loss really that's significant is the one that works on the pancreatic enzymes. I can't remember the actual name of it off the top of my head, but Ozempic is one of the main brand names. That works by reducing appetite. It works. It has fairly intense side effects, especially to begin with. It makes you nauseous, but studies have shown it helps you to lose 10 to 15% body weight. But it does that by helping you reduce your calorie intake by a lot. Like you might eat half or a quarter as much as you did before. That's how much it impacts the appetite. My concern about that is that when you eat less, your metabolism slows down more. And when your metabolism slows down more, you burn less fuel. So of course it works, because it basically puts you into like a starvation mode of how many calories you take in. That would be my perspective on it. But if your problem is caused especially by suboptimal levels of thyroid hormone, which I believe is the case a lot of the time, then it actually makes that worse. By eating a lot less, you slow down your metabolism more, your body will actually make even less thyroxine. So I would say it's really all the rage at the moment. It's huge, but I am concerned about it for that reason. And so again, I would say hormones first. Now, if you've been to a hormone optimization specialist and they said it's not the thyroid and it's not your sex hormones and it's not your stress hormones and all the rest of it, it's just that you have this tendency to overeat, which does happen, then by all means, it could be a good one, but I would definitely not have it be the starting place. Growth hormone, a hell of a lot safer in that regard. The growth hormone releasing peptide, at least, not just taking growth hormone itself. But yeah, as I said, I also wouldn't have it be the first thing that you do. Growth hormone, the other reason I like growth hormone releasing hormone and peptide is because it really stimulates the digestive system. So whereas taking things like Ozempic, slow down the digestive system. Again, we talked about this in the digestion episode. If you have an issue of constipation and with sluggish digestion, that peptide, I think it's leptin modulating, the Ozempic, only makes it worse. It's only going to slow down your digestion even more. Whereas a growth hormone stimulating peptide will increase the speed at which things move through you, while simultaneously supporting you in losing body fat. So yeah, that's why I would prefer it. But again, always depends on the situation. Now, another hormonal peptide, I could put this in both categories, which is not anywhere near enough research on, but which has absolutely been shown to not only have all the benefits I talked about, but have the tendency to increase muscle mass and reduce body fat, is oxytocin. And I've heard, different hormonal doctors, especially female hormonal doctors, talk about this and talk about why we're not using this. It's the least side effect of everything, including growth hormone peptides. Like, of everything, oxytocin has the best safety profile, and yet it's not being utilized despite having those proven benefits, especially for women, because a lot of what helps stimulate like more muscle growth and fat loss is anabolic hormones, right? Whether it's testosterone replacement, so-called steroids, whether it's SARMs, all these things like have this androgenic quality in women, make them more masculine that many women do not want. Oxytocin is actually more of a feminine hormone, arguably, even though it has impacts in men and women. It's certainly not going to make you more masculine. So why are women who want to lose weight being, often are being, recommended androgenic things, or these things that curb appetite, but also slow metabolism, all the rest of it, when we could look at oxytocin? Again, can you easily find a hormone optimization specialist who will recommend oxytocin to you, prescribe it to you? No. But can you find one if you just Google it? Yeah, probably. So this is the thing. It's looking for someone who can do something, that finding the specialist who can offer you the solutions that you want to try. Let's just put it that way. And then lastly, with peptides. So, the other good thing about oxytocin, again, $100, several months supply, depending on who you get it from. So very, very cheap. Now, considerably more expensive, but worth trying if you have immune system issues, and many of us do. We'll talk about this in another episode, but most diseases have an inflammation component, and inflammation is always dysfunction of, or lack of optimal functioning of the immune system. So thymulin, thymosin, there's thymosin alpha-1 is one of the common ones. And then TB4, thymosin beta-4. These are some of the main peptides that your thymus does make, and that your thymus would make more of if it were more youthful and working better. And so, as I said, those peptides aren't cheap. There is a whole thing between kind of supplemental peptides, which is all we've talked about today, and bioregulator peptides, which potentially have the ability to regenerate the gland itself. But I think this episode's gone on too long. We'll have to do that in a different episode. So that's a teaser. So there is a completely different class of peptides from a completely different end of the world that potentially can, there are definitely many studies that support it, that can help your gland to regenerate itself and produce more of it itself. But again, that's different. In the West, generally we don't focus on that. Certainly doctors don't prescribe it. So we're talking about the supplemental peptides that are giving you what your own body is not making enough of. And so the ones I just listed are very powerful. They're not cheap, unfortunately, but can they take your immune system that's like highly reactive and inflammatory, and that has gut inflammation and all of these issues, and potentially help with that, or allergies, all that kind of stuff? Can it help with that? Yes, absolutely. But unfortunately, as I said, not cheap.
Right. No, that's really good information. And yes, we are coming to a close. So are there any final thoughts, Alwyn, before we finish?
Yeah, just again, as I said before, this is only the beginning of the conversation. I would love to do more detailed, in-depth looks at various aspects of this. I have my favorites, but I'm also keen to hear what you would like to, you, the viewer or listener, would like to know more about. So best way to do that is go onto YouTube if you're not already, and leave us a comment there and tell us what you would like to hear more about. And again, I don't claim to know everything, right? The reason why I feel like you may want to hear me is because I have such a broad knowledge, but I don't have an in-depth knowledge, right? I'm not a specialist. So especially if you're a doctor, if you're a practitioner, and you want to correct me on something, you want to point something out to me, if there's more to something, by all means, I would love to hear it, right? The process of learning is never ending. And just for those listening as well, I want to say, I hope I've not made it feel overwhelming for you. If I have, I'd say maybe, go back or annotate this and just go to the sections that are maybe more practical about what to actually do about it. But this is really, really exciting. This is the fact that we in the last few decades have the ability to optimize this stuff, which as far as we know has never happened in human history. They've talked, in like an alchemy, like the elixir of life, the key to eternal life and happiness and all the rest of it. So there's been this concept going back thousands of years that we could maybe find this thing that, like, the fountain of youth that makes us feel youthful forever, or for at least much longer period of time, right? And there's like stories about it and people living hundreds of years and all the rest of it. And I'm not saying hormone optimization is going to cause that, but this is like a little bit of it at least, right? At least means that we're not going to feel like we're basically old and done for by the time we're 40. Like, at least that we can say, even if it's not going to make us live to be 500 years old, it can at least allow us to enjoy the lifespan that we are expecting to a much higher level and perform at a much higher level.
Oh, I think you just said it there. It's enjoy that lifespan. So yeah, I'm up for that, and whatever I can do, like you said, to optimize that. Absolutely. 100%. Well, thank you, Elwyn. And thank you all for listening. And please make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And we will see you next time. Thanks again. I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, I want to tell you about a way that you can support the podcast while also getting great deals on high quality supplements that Elwyn and I personally use. And that's Feel Younger. What I love about Feel Younger is that they have great quality products with minimal fillers at a very affordable price. You can call their customer support team 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. And in my experience, they're very helpful and friendly. And the thing I love most of all is the amazing descriptions that Elwyn has written about each product category on that topic. And each product has so much education on it that I've actually learned more from reading the descriptions than I have from a lot of articles. So to support the podcast, please use Feel Younger for all your supplement needs. And to let them know we sent you, use promo code RejuvenateMe for 20% off your first order at feelyounger.net. That's 20% off your first order using promo code RejuvenateMe at feelyounger.net.